We can grow all together and going in different directions, but at some point we will be linked because each one with his own knowledge can help another one, can educate or create hope to someone else. So the rhizome sort of make us growing in different ways, but together still at the same time in the same environment.
The energy transition is happening, but is it fair? Is it working for people like you and me, or just for big market players? Welcome to Energetic. I am Marine Cornelis, an expert in energy and climate policies, and I bring you the voices shaping our energy future. Activists, scientists, policymakers, the real people making real change, often against the odds. Here, we do not settle for surface-level takes. We dig into the challenges, the solutions, and the lessons that do not always make the headlines. And in doing so, we rediscover something vital, our ability to trust in institutions, to believe in change, and to reclaim our power to act. Because if we want just resilience, if we want just transition, we need to understand what it takes to make it happen. And more importantly, we need to believe that we can. Let's get into it. Today, we're not just talking about kilowatts and solar panels. We'll talk about power. Not just the power that flows through grids, but the kind that shapes relationship, identities, and opportunities. My guest today, Junior Mbangala, is a researcher at the University of Oxford, and he works on the intersection of energy poverty, community power, and social justice. He is looking at energy communities in Belgium and across sub-Saharan Africa, not as neat and replicable models, but as living and breathing social systems. With one foot in academia and the other in international diplomacy, Junior brings a rare perspective. He uses social network analysis to reveal how these communities really work, who's included, who's left out, and how trust and participation move through a system. And he doesn't stop there. Inspired by Deleuze and Guattari's philosophy of the rhizome, he helps us reimagine decentralized energy not as structure to manage, but as a web of entangled lives and aspirations. Junior's work stretches, as I said, from Wallonia to Africa, and from grassroots action to the WTO stage in Geneva, where he contributes to policy debate at the intersection of trade, sustainability, and equity. And this conversation today, it's really about complexity, but also about clarity, and about not mistaking representation for inclusion, and about building energy systems that are more than technically sound. They must be socially just and truly shared. So let's get into it. Junior, welcome to the show.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Marine. Thank you for such a nice introduction. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. So, Junior, what was the spark that led you to explore energy poverty and social justice and networks?
Well, thank you for that question. I feel like it's been quite a long journey since I started my studies first back home in Belgium. I was studying the economy and then I did public policy and then I had the chance to go to the UK. So I was fortunate enough to go to Oxford. And really, when I came to Oxford, I really met inspiring and really interesting professors. And some of them were working on energy systems and sustainability. And then I feel like I got into the topic thanks to the really nice person I've met throughout my studies.
That's great. And someone told me that you got into energy justice also by listening to this podcast, right?
Well, actually, I've been quite a good listener to this podcast, so it feels really special for me as well to be here. So thank you for having me. And yeah, I mean, I've been listening to your podcast and delving into energy justice, listening to really good speakers talking about this critical issue of giving access to energy to everyone and thinking about the people left behind. And yeah, because of this and also because of my different aspiration, I kind of really immerse myself into this fantastic topic, and now I do research on it. Yeah.
That's great. So how would you explain this topic to someone back home in Liège in Wallonia, Belgium?
That is actually a great question because, lately I've been thinking about like communities, and I went back home, and I was home. I'm from Liège, this city in Belgium, and then I did ask a few neighbors of mine. I was like, okay, guys, what do you think about the concept of energy communities? And basically, some of them, they're like, what are you talking about? So it's made me think about when we do research, it's quite also important to be able to sort of transmit, right? It's quite important to, doing research, but also being able to explain what we are talking about. So back to your questions, how would I explain those sort of things? Well, I suppose I would first ask people what they think about when it comes to energy and energy communities, and then I suppose I will try to share my understanding of the topic.
Okay. And so what is usually their first reaction? And I think it's interesting because you've been working in different contexts, right? So there must be like some very different understanding.
Well, I suppose when it comes to energy, most of the time also like people used to think like it's a very technical topic, so they don't really, or they feel like they don't really understand the technology and they're a bit afraid to talk about it. But I feel like when it comes to energy, it's quite simple. I feel like energy is like what we really need to do basically everything in life. And then once you start explaining that, you can just like think about what is needed for me to take action or to do some actions. And then you can easily explain like energy in different environment, right? So
Yeah.
basically that.
Yeah. It's really more than moving electrons or molecules, right? It's really the kind of life that powers our daily action in a way. Yeah, someone once told me that energy is really the light, and that I found it really beautiful because it was so much more than, this kind of, it was very philosophical in a way, energy is the light, and really it depends on the context you live in. For so many people, it's really like having access or not to the light. And currently we are recording this episode in July, but we are broadcasting it early September. But currently we're in the middle of a heat wave everywhere in Europe. And energy is also what allows us to feel comfortable, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And when you say like energy is the light, that really rings the bell to me because I used to think that the light should come from the bottom and not from the top, right? So as like citizens, we are like as individuals as well able to among ourselves bring this light, right? And create hopes. And if I may, you did ask me how did I jump to the topic, and I remember like a good conversation with a former professor of mine, and she's a professor at the University of Oxford, and she was telling me educating someone is not only about making sure that someone can be learning, it's also about creating hope. And that's also why I really decided to do research on this topic, because for me it was a way to educate myself. So
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying that really energy is hope, and there is a hope for education as well. And I find it really beautiful and powerful. So do you hope to educate other people on energy topics in a way?
Well, I suppose, yeah, in a way, yes. I've been hoping to educate myself first because when I started working on this topic, I really knew a little about energy systems. So thanks to really amazing people that I've met along the way. And I have to say the name of Brenda Boardman, which is the one who developed the first definition of fuel energy poverty back in the UK in the 80s. She's been educating me and she created hope in me. And then I feel like now that I'm doing research, I feel like, one of my goals is to sort of educate people and also creating hope, right? I suppose by what I do, I'd love to sort of give some inspiration as well to some people then who will also take the lead and be working on the same topic, but maybe in a different angle, right? So that's what I really want to do, yeah.
And that's really a nice bridge with your work on social network analysis, right? I mean, because in a way, what you're saying is that when you start by educating one person, it can trickle down to many other. That's exactly how some kind of a social network works. Can you walk us through what is this method and what it reveals? Because I guess that's, it's one of the things this podcast has been circling around, but not necessarily diving deep into. So can you explain that a little?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you very much for bringing this up because that's really something I care about. Well, I feel like I really like this quote, each one, teach one. And I feel like when it comes to social network analysis, that's a bit what we do, right? Social network is like understanding the different link and bridge among people, among citizens in a given environment, right? We are all linked in a way. And when it comes to energy systems in a given place, well, we can understand the different power relationship, and not even only power, but relationship among people, the relationship among people and buildings and grids and the network. And we are all linked at some point. And some people have the ability to educate someone else, some other people then, because they have more knowledge regarding a certain topic. And if we do this social network analysis, we can understand that each one can teach another one. And I feel like we should rethink our way to do society by understanding the different networks or the different social networks that link us in a society.
That's really interesting. How does that translate concretely in the energy sector?
Well, when it comes to the energy sector, I feel like we've been understanding the energy sector at the individual level. So I feel like each one will pay for his own like bills and consumption. It's a very like we are following quite capitalism model and individualism model. And I feel like when it comes to social network, we could potentially in a given place understand how we can be supplied all together and pay all together or participate all together. That also joined the idea of energy communities, right? It's like if we understand the social network in a given place, we could potentially also like understand how we could bring collectivity and how we could evolve as common society altogether rather than at the individual level as we do nowadays, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had several people talking about energy communities really on this show. And I think it's really one of the, let's say, interesting models that is like still under construction, despite the existing energy directives that are around building energy communities, whether renewable energy communities, local energy communities. So, they are just kind of different models, but they get to be shaped by the kind of local relationship that exists. And what I see here at home in Italy is that the energy community model is understood as something very, very different from what I see in, let's say, Flanders, Belgium, where some of the energy communities have been like emerging, like the first ones, or in Denmark, for instance. And here in Italy, they are way more based on the kind of technical/financial relationship than really about tying the people together. So it's been like a very different starting point where in some contexts you had a community and then you decided to add energy to it. Whereas in the country I evolve, it's more like, how can we make a system that people will join and that will eventually build a community? So that's a very different approach, right? Is it something that you've been looking into? I can see you nod and laugh a little.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating, isn't it? Because, like you said, I feel like when it comes to energy communities, we've been like thinking about the financial side of it, technological side of it, and it can be like in the Netherlands, in the UK, Belgium, France, Germany. But there's two words in energy community, and I really like to put an emphasis on community first. So I suppose the idea is first to believe or to create a community, and I believe in the creation of community. And what is a community for? I suppose it's for empowering each other, is to help each other, to share knowledge among the communities, and to create this sense of actually community to say, well, we are going to do it together. So I suppose that's what I would love to focus on first when it comes to energy communities. And it's not something I really see often because I feel like when it comes to energy communities nowadays, it's more important for people to really focus on finance, technology, and what will make the community happening, because we've seen a lot of initiatives, but there only been initiatives. But I feel like if you really want to see the communities, the energy communities happening, we should probably focus on community first.
And that's really a nice bridge with some work that you've been doing or some kind of philosophy you've been diving through, which is the concept of the rhizome, drawing really on Deleuze and Guattari's. So please, what is this concept of the rhizome and why does it apply so much to energy and the way we build the energy transition?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I really love this topic, and I'm quite a crazy fan of the rhizome and of Gilles Deleuze, which is a French philosopher. So back in the 80s, with his friends, this psychoanalyst Félix Guattari, they had this strong theory of network. Actually, it's a network theory. At the beginning, they were like analyzing like network, urban networks, social networks, and for them, they see a connection among people as a rhizome, like as something spread in the environment, something that we cannot really tangibly understand, and is different link that are not vertical but more horizontal, if you will. And I've retaken this idea of the rhizome to apply it in my energy research, because when it comes to energy and energy communities, as we were saying, I think we should put an emphasis on social network analysis and understanding the different power relationship or link among people in society. And then if you add this philosophy or this idea of the rhizome to understand it, then you can get into another dimension, right, of understanding social network analysis. So I don't want to do too much philosophy here, but I feel like, I suppose the main idea behind the rhizome is to say, well, we are all connected, but not in the traditional way of thinking, but in a different way, right? We can kind of grow all together and going in different direction, but at some point we will be linked because each one with his own knowledge can help another one, can educate or create hope to someone else. So the rhizome sort of make us growing in different ways, but together still at the same time in the same environment. So yeah, the idea of the rhizome is a way to say, well, we have connections, we are related, but in a given system, in different ways. But if we are able to understand what connects us, we will be able to grow all together collectively and not at the individual level. So that's a bit the idea of the rhizome. That's the way I understand the rhizome, actually.
That's really, really interesting and really inspiring. And I mean, you keep mentioning the term hope, and I think it's really one of those terms that or concepts or ideas we really need to build on because of everything that happens, because of climate change, because of all the terrible wars and fights for powers that are happening around all around the planet. And what I see at the end of the day, it's really a question of participation and kind of empowerment and the tentative to reconcile bottom-up enthusiasm with the existing uneven power, uneven access as well. So when thinking this rhizome, how do you reconcile it with the kind of challenges linked to like very bottom-up power that is imposed onto people?
That's a bit the challenge, right? Because I feel like it's always nice to think about good theory or interesting philosophy, but how do you apply them, right, in let's say, real life? And I feel like when it comes to social sciences, and nowadays we're talking about climate change and the energy transition all day long, and I feel like something we are missing is how we think about society. I really feel like we should rethink or think about society in a different way, not the way we used to. And when it comes to the rhizome, I feel like the rhizome would be taking this approach of the rhizome would be a nice idea of starting everything from scratch. Of course, we're not starting everything from scratch, but philosophically, how I would love to apply the rhizome is to say, well, let's try to do something, but really differently now. So that's how I would apply this. It's not about technical way that I would introduce or implement the philosophy of the rhizome into energy systems, but it's more thinking about policymakers, thinking about citizens, thinking about people working on the topic, thinking about individuals willing to participate in energy communities. Take a step back and think about how you would love to approach whatever you're going to do, whatever you're going to be doing. So I feel like if we have this idea of doing or making society together and this idea of the rhizome, even before starting something, that is how I feel like we could potentially like apply this philosophy thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because what I feel that you're suggesting is some kind of a way to build projects that would be, or develop projects that would be way more centered around how do we build this kind of networks, do we build this kind of rhizome, so that there will be objectives, of course, and perhaps some technical objectives, but we need first and foremost to construct a community, to reinforce this community, but it has to be extremely localized, right? Is it possible to set up some kind of rules if we wanted to export that into a project or into a certain approach? Because it's very R&D, and I mean, I really like it, but it's like a really interesting way of shifting or building social innovation.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And that leads me back to what I do. I really focus on Wallonia, one region in Belgium, for my research. Why am I doing this? Because regarding what's happening in Belgium, Wallonia has the highest rate of energy poverty. So people experiencing like poor access to energy or difficult access to energy. And then I was thinking, well, if I'm able to build something or work on a specific topic in this region, who is facing the highest rate of energy poverty, then I will be probably able to replicate the outcome in another region. So I think it's something that has to be working locally, but then that can be replicated in a different context, I suppose. So of course, we're not doing like a worldwide rhizome or having a worldwide rhizomatic approach of energy systems. I suppose it has to be local, but then it can be expanded elsewhere. That's what I believe, actually.
And that's interesting because you also work with the World Trade Organization, and you've also worked a little bit in sub-Saharan Africa. So is it something that you have been observing? You know, a few months ago, I joined a really interesting conversation with European researchers and policymakers and people like me who are a little bit in between. So it was with European and with African researchers and policymakers and people in between, working on energy communities. And really what I took out from that conversation was this kind of discussion of who owns the power, also the kind of power to shift the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So is it something you've been also working on, really, like assessing the different contexts where you've been working on?
Yeah, definitely. So something I've been learning is like when I do research, it's really like context matters. Like the really first important things to do is understand the context where you want to apply some thinking. So I've been working on challenge of access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa, and then I had in mind lots of theory about energy poverty and how we measure energy poverty, thanks to the work done by Brenda Boardman and other scientists in the UK. And then when it comes to countries and regions in Africa, well, you're not going to apply the same measurements when facing or when you're talking to people facing extreme poverty, right? Where the needs are different, the challenges are different. So context matter. It's really important to understand the context, the resources they have, what they need, and then you can probably start thinking about potential way to improve a given situation. And you mentioned the WTO, and at the WTO, I really understood the different concerns from developing economies or developed economies. So when it comes to international trade and sustainability in trade, it's the same challenge, right? You really need to understand where people are coming from, what is the local situation, then you can potentially work on improving a given situation. So I do feel like if we really want to achieve something, depending of where we're working, we really need to take the time to be humble and understand context of the local situation.
Yeah, so in a way, it's not one rhizome, but many different rhizomes that coexist and that shape our identities, that shape our social structures as well, and shape participation and power.
Yeah, definitely. I think I love to think that the rhizome never ends. I mean, we know where it starts, but we never know where it ends, right? Because I suppose the rhizome is kind of endless, right? We can extend this idea, this philosophy, and try to find bridges and links without finishing it. So I suppose it's good at some point to really make the full cycle. But then, yeah, that's a bit the idea.
Yeah, no, that's really, really, really interesting to see how, the kind of difference between the global challenge and local solutions, and also the kind of local dimensions that will influence the global context. And we've had several episodes about that, including one recently with the sub-Saharan of Can Europe, where we talked about benefit sharing of renewables, and we talked not so extensively, but a little bit about the various contexts that we need to build on. And I would like to bridge also with the kind of the fact that energy, it is, as we said earlier, something that it's one of the foundation of modern life and comfort and so on. But the way we've been using energy or conceiving energy or thinking energy, it's been very embedded in our various identities, right? You've been working on energy poverty in Belgium. You've been working on energy poverty in different contexts, and me too. And what I've been noticing is that there are so many elements that make it very hard to put usages and visions and approaches into one box, right? And having this theory of rhizome, or this approach, helps really shape the multifaceted nature of energy poverty, if I use this kind of jargon, right?
Yeah, I mean, totally. And just thinking, one of the very first podcasts I've been listening, and one of your podcasts was with Lucy Middlemis, and she made this link between energy poverty and vulnerable people. She was talking about disabled people facing energy poverty. So that's also how fascinating is the topic, isn't it? It's like you can really bridge this topic, this critical and important topic, to lots of different issues. Energy poverty, there's not only one way to understand energy poverty, and you can connect energy poverty to other challenges as disabilities or and so on. All right. So I really like when I was listening, I remember Lucy talking. She really created hope, and she educated me that well that then I emailed her, and then we've been in touch, and I've been able to ask her like a lot of questions that I had, and then that's also another rhizomatic way of working, right? It's like each one can teach another one, and then we can connect and discuss stuff that I wasn't even thinking about. So I suppose the fascinating side of working on energy poverty.
Yeah, I know that's really nice what you're saying, because the podcast, in a way, it's an instrument for education, for empowerment. It's one piece in this rhizome, right?
Yeah, there is like this point of contact where the ideas emerge, and then they go in different direction, and at some point they will go back to you. So yeah. But I feel like what you've been doing in this podcast has been a starting point, not only for me, I'm pretty sure for a lot of people listening to you and working on the topic. I mentioned Lucy Middle East, but I could have said Louis Sunderland as well, which is someone I've been listening through your podcast, and then I've been learning so much. And I was like, wow, okay, it's fascinating how we could like push understanding of a specific topic, even if I've been working for more than a year on energy poverty. And it's the third time I say her name, but for me, it's a legend. Brenda Boardman is really like the one who introduced me to the topic. And by talking to her, I was like, okay, I am talking with the one who developed the first really definition of energy poverty, fuel poverty back in the 80s in the UK. But then it doesn't stop there. You can still like really understand different aspects and different challenges or surrounding energy poverty. So yeah.
No, what you're it's important what you say, that it doesn't stop there. Like every conversation is the starting point for something else, right? But yeah, now I would like you to reflect on something that you wish people understood better about energy justice. Really, I mean, now when we're recording, you're currently in Geneva. Is there something you would like the people here in Geneva understand better about energy justice?
Well, I think the link I would love to make is like when we talk and when we think about energy justice, we usually think about people left behind or vulnerable people who don't have a fair access to energy. So it's a bit unjust. So we need to sort of solve or fix it. Something I would love to say also is that there is no a single type of person who can do research or who can be thinking about it, because I feel like in social sciences and in research, we are really used to have researcher bringing up this topic and talking about this topic. But I suppose as citizens, it's also about what is our positionality. As someone who is living currently and working in Geneva, the WTO, what is my positionality? Not only because I'm in this organization, not only because I'm a researcher, but as a human being, as a citizen, right? And, you know, my background is in economy. I'm an economist by training. So I used to be working on econometrics thing, public policy. And then I made this link with climate change sciences and energy research. And I was thinking even, well, you don't have to be a geographer if you want to talk about energy justice. You can be a sociologist, you can be a physicist, a chemist, you can be someone who is passionate about history, and you can still have your positionality and bring it up and talking about energy justice, access to energy, who is facing challenges to have the same right. Because at the end of the day, it's about basic needs, it's about human rights. So if, I suppose, you want to think and to advocate for human rights, you don't have to be coming from a specific environment. You don't have to have a specific background. Don't have to be a scientist per se. You don't have to be someone who works at a certain place. I suppose as a citizen, as a human being, you can be part of this rhizomatic approach and this.
That's great, Junior. I have one very, very last question that is building on exactly what you just said. It's really about putting now your imagination. If you could reimagine one policy or one institution or one body or one organization that could make that happen, who would that be?
Wow, that's a really tough question. I feel like I wasn't prepared for that one. No, but really, I think I would say I'm really coming from a really humble city and humble neighborhood in Liège, Belgium. The neighborhood I grew up in is called Chenet, and I'm really proud of my people there. And I spent most of my life in Chenet. And something I really realized is that we are kind of waiting, and it's been like this for many, many years. We're waiting for some people on the top of us, policymakers, governments, politicians. We are waiting for them to provide policies that will help us to live, in better circumstances, or we are waiting for them to bring policy that will probably improve our lives. But I feel like if there is something I could change, I would love to change this way of thinking. I don't think that a small amount of people should be the one designing policy for the majority of society, right? I really believe in a society where the majority, the people, let's say in the bottom, could think and probably raise their voices to provide policies that will make their life better, because they know what they need, they know what they are facing, and they probably are in a better place to sort of provide policy. So if there is something I could change, or if there's something I had the ability to make different, it would be that changing our way to provide policies and thinking about the majority instead of a small amount of people doing policy.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like, how can the majority contribute better also to the policy making and to inform policymakers so that it represents better the interest of the many and not those of the few, right? So it's really about, at the end of the day, this rhizome, it's supporting the earth we're on and the trees and so on. But without the rhizome, can the tree prevail? I don't know. That's so maybe that's how we're gonna end this episode. Thank you so much, Junior. It's been really enlightening and yeah, we need more of this kind of very, very positive conversations, right?
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Energetic. It's been a pleasure diving deep into the world of sustainability and the just energy transition with some of the most forward-thinking mouths out there. I'm Marine Cornelis, your host from policy consultancy Next Energy Consumer, and it's been an incredible journey growing this podcast together with you, our knowledgeable and passionate listeners. Since 2021, we've shared countless stories, insights, and ideas over more than 40 episodes, and it's all thanks to your support and enthusiasm. If you're enjoyed our journey so far and want to help us keep the conversation going, why not support us on Patreon? Every bit helps us bring more inspiring content your way. Check out the show notes for the link. And hey, if you're a part of an organization that shares our passion for a sustainable and inclusive energy future, we're excited to explore sponsorship opportunities with you. It's a fantastic way to connect with a dedicated audience and make an even bigger impact together. Shout out to the fantastic Igor Mikhailovich from Podcast Media Factory for his incredible sound design work, making every episode a joy to listen to. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Energetic on your favorite podcast platform. And if you think a friend or a colleague could benefit from our episode, we'd love for you to spread the word. It helps us grow and keep the energy transition conversation alive. Sharing is caring. Follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to stay engaged and update on all things energetic. Thanks once again for lending your ears. Until next time.